Hope slowly dies as black smoke blinds the stars in ire. Like vermin men try to hide, nowhere to run. As the butchers have arrived from the skies of fire, and the cannons of destruction have begun.
Skhraal.
Yes, my lord.
Assault analysis.
The corpse worshippers hold steady. The fortification along the eastern dock does not yield to our force.
And what of Kulzu?
His warriors broke the western wall. The men slaughtered the armed peasantry in droves. The god of blood will have his fill of skulls tonight. But he is halted by the Astartes in the north. Losses are at a minimum, yet if we continue on this front, it will be many days before an advance can be made to the east. Assuming our foe does not become reinforced.
Call the serfs back from the east. Bring them to artillery. Kulzu's skirmish has failed. Have him waylay the corpse emperor's worthless sons in the north for now. Ready the armor to advance on the eastern dock.
Of course, sire. What of the Astartes? The possibility of further reinforcements may turn this into a most expensive endeavor.
What of the loyalist filth? They will mangle and burn beneath our heels. Bring them more about. Ready the Megatherian for deployment. We will not stop until every last man, woman and child is but sludge to lubricate our treads. And his space marines. I would have them be food for worms. Sear every icon of his image into oblivion. I want their bolts. I want their ceramite. Bring me every last Imperial apparatus we can use as knife and fork for Khorne's great feast. Drop the Megatherian. Break their spine.
Hi there, and welcome to our long-awaited first ever homebrew review, where we take the best of your homebrews submitted to us through our Discord, do a little dramatic reading to set the tone, followed by a full rundown of the homebrew, and end off with an informal discussion about what we really like about the homebrew, and where it shines the most, as well as what we may have done differently and perhaps draw some comparisons to other popular homebrews within the community. So if any of that sounds good to you, or you'd like to submit your own homebrew, please come on over to our Discord through the link in the description and we'll go over your submission and see if we can bring it on for a review. And finally, if you've been enjoying our content so far and you'd like to help us out, please smash that subscribe button or just consider having a look at our Patreon. The Iron Butchers are a Chaos warband in service to the god of blood and skulls, Khorne, formed through the unholy union of Chaos Space Marines from both the 4th Legion Iron Warriors and the 12th Legion World Eaters. Working in tandem, the doctrines of these two deadly forces of chaos has created an approach to war that combines the tactical siege warfare and artillery might of the Iron Legion with the unmatched brutality of the Sons of the Red Angel. The influence of the Siege Masters of the 4th weighs heavily within them, being a rather militaristically organised force in comparison to most who succumb to the blood-curdling rage of Khorne. Likely fueled by a disconnect within the warband between its Iron Warriors and World Eaters, as despite their mostly unified worship, internal conflict does occasionally arise. Conflicts that are quelled by key figures within the warband that truly exemplify the strength of the homogeny. And as you might expect from this combination of Chaos Space Marines, the Iron Butchers possess devastating demon engines that play a key role in the way in which they annihilate their foes. They were once a much more powerful force with a long-standing base on the edge of the Eye of Terror. However, this time of chaotic prosperity wouldn't last, as an almighty Imperial assault led by the ever-stubborn scions of Rogal Dawn, the Black Templars, would bring the warband to the brink of extinction. And so in the name of survival, the Iron Butchers would flee further into the galactic north, taking up a somewhat nomadic residence near the Screaming Vortex. Using the Coronis Expanse as hunting grounds and its surrounding regions, they've made a name for themselves as ruthless Chaos mercenaries, giving their bloody services to the highest bidder, be it another warband, a corrupt planetary governor, or even an unscrupulous rogue trader. They'll happily give their fealty to those touched by chaotic temptation so long as two criteria are met: the promise of resources paid, and the necessity to spill blood for the Blood God to collect skulls for the Skull Throne. Utilizing their force of a few hundred heretic Astartes, bolstered by thousands of men, subhumans, and mutant scum, and an unknown vault of tech heretical engines, there is no way out of payment, as failure to do so would only guarantee your skull and blood be used as tribute and your lands and property thoroughly plundered. Whilst the entire warband is unified under the Blood God's vessel, the reverence of Khorne is not evenly shared amongst the individual Iron Butchers. Now, as you might expect, those Marines originating from the World Eater's Legion are extremely devout in their worship to Khorne, whereas Khorne's devotion amongst the Iron Warriors varies from Marine to Marine. The most exalted Iron Warriors aren't too dissimilar from the World Eaters, with a number of them undergoing the process to have the dreaded Butcher's nails implants drilled into their brains to enhance their aggressiveness and connect more deeply with the Blood God. However, in the opposite extreme, some of the Iron Warriors don't worship Khorne at all, and choose to worship Chaos Undivided. However, due to the chapter's unique culture and indoctrination, even these Marines still choose to acknowledge Khorne as the most powerful of the Pantheon. And whilst this divide is the primary contributor to the warband's infighting, it's a necessary part of what makes them so devastating to face upon the battlefield, with these Marines being the primary executors of the Iron Butcher's artillery front. And just as the worship of Khorne has influenced the Iron Warriors, the influence of the Iron Fourth has also influenced the World Eaters amongst the warband, with only useful chaotic mutations being tolerated and larger mutations or even marine possessions being absolutely intolerable. These have become seen as things that, whilst violent and brutal, ultimately get in the way of the Iron Butcher's combat doctrines, which are unanimously seen as the most effective way to reap the most blood for the Blood God, and the most skulls for the Skull Throne. This has led to a high number of Marines from both sides having mutations replaced with extensive augmentations, with the leader of the warband, Warsmith Vhorrax, being the most brilliant example of this, a man existing perpetually inside of his mechanical, living armor in constant torment. And in tandem with this, the use of demons is perceived to be something most damning to the warband. A demon's use is strictly prohibited unless it can be forever bound to a machine or weapon, an art form in which the Iron Butchers have become understandably pretty adept. The Iron Butchers take to the field with the power of a jackhammer, leveling everything in their way under their tanks and barrage of heavy weaponry until they are close enough to unleash hordes of berserkers, splitting their assaults into 5 essential phases. Phase 1, Artillery Barrage. The Iron Butchers begin each engagement with a devastating artillery barrage, using heavy weapons such as basilisks, whirlwinds, and predator tanks to soften up enemy positions and destroy key targets. During this phase, the more tempered Iron Warriors will work alongside their hordes of serfs to effectively shock an adversary's initial entrenchment. This phase will continue throughout the assault, but will ultimately lessen when necessary to minimize allied casualties, though the warband's serfdom is far less likely to receive reprieve in the same way its Space Marines would. Phase 2, Armored Assault. Once the enemy's defenses have been weakened, the Iron Butchers launch their armoured assault. They deploy squads of Iron Warriors heavy weapons infantry to advance on the enemy's position. The infantry is supported by a screen of fast-moving tanks, which provide covering fire and absorb enemy counterattacks. Phase 3, Dreadnought and Demon Engine Charge. As the Iron Butchers close in on the enemy position, they'll unleash their Dreadnoughts and Demon Engines. Though few in number, these massive war machines' goal is to smash into the enemy lines, tearing apart fortifications and defenses, allowing the more numerous berserkers to engage in close combat with the majority of the enemy troops. This phase begins and ends in mere moments, acting as a tactical explosion to take advantage of any and all weaknesses revealed by the artillery barrage. Phase 4, the Destroyer's Raid. While the Dreadnoughts and Demon Engines engage the enemy in close combat, the Iron Butchers deploy their Black Bane's destroyer squads. These squads of Raptors still employ tactics and weapons from the ancient Legion destroyer squads of old. Flying over enemy defenses, they target enemy commanders, heavy weapon teams, and other high-value targets, butchering the enemy in close combat. And as they leave, they release a discharge of rad bombs, contaminating the battlefield, weakening and disorientating enemy troops, and further preparing the field for the Berserkers. Phase 5, Berserker Horde. With the enemy's defenses now shattered, the Iron Butchers unleash their World Eater Berserkers. These ferocious warriors charge into the enemy lines, using their chain axes to hack and slash their way through any resistance. The Iron Warriors provide tactical support, isolating and destroying enemy strongpoints. During this phase, hundreds of Khornate cultist abhumans and mutants will be let loose. Whilst they're a rabble of disorganized meat, they're efficient straggler killers and further contribute to throwing an enemy foe into total disarray. The flaws of the Doctrine. Now, whilst this strategy is for all intents and purposes overwhelmingly devastating, it's not without its drawbacks, and can only be maintained for a short period in time. The Warband always aims to destroy the enemy in the shortest possible time, as a war of attrition will likely see them struggle due to the overall lack of resources to sustain a longer battle, the lack of adaptability to face the shifting scenario, and most of all, the growing lack of discipline within the ranks of the Iron Butchers, unable to keep the Berserker fury at bay for extended periods of time. As stated before, the use of heavy armor and weapons, as well as the need for repairs and maintenance, can put a strain on the Warband's resources. This could lead to shortages of ammunition, fuel, and spare parts, which in turn can affect the Warband's combat effectiveness. The Iron Butchers need to win every battle in the shortest time possible, to avoid a situation in which the necessary resources are completely depleted. Using heavily armored infantry and vehicles in this way can make the Warband less mobile and more vulnerable to ambushes, flanking maneuvers, and hit-and-run attacks. But the biggest flaw in the Iron Butchers' approach to war is likely their reliance on the World Eater's rage. The aggressive tactics of the World Eaters can make it difficult to maintain discipline and coordination amongst their troops. The frenzied nature of these warriors can sometimes lead to rash decisions and actions, putting the entire warband at risk. Amongst the Iron Butchers, there are dozens of interesting and creative characters. So let's take a moment to look at a few of the most pivotal ones. Warsmith Vhorrax. The undisputed leader of the Warband, Vhorrax is a Khorne-worshipping Iron Warrior. His preference for direct, brutal warfare mixed with his knowledge of intricate siege tactics makes him a formidable commander. Despite his keen intellect and brutal leadership, the presence of various factions within the Warband means his authority is always being tested. Interestingly, Vhorrax wasn't a mechanical abomination until he seemingly died at the hands of a massive orc warboss, who crushed him with his hydraulic claw before collapsing because of the wounds suffered. But instead of letting him pass, it is believed that Khorne himself blew new life into his body, morphing it and fusing it with his armor, turning him into a living machine. Vhorrax's mind is no longer just the cold, calculating tool of an Iron Warrior, as he's always fighting an inner battle to retain his sanity, without falling to the endless call for blood. In combat, Vhorrax wields a one-of-a-kind chain weapon known as the Corpse Grinder, a terrible creation, demonic in origin. Khol-Su. The overall leader of the Khornate cult of the Iron Butchers. Khol-Su's role is crucial in keeping the volatile World Eaters aligned with the Iron Warriors. While Khol-Su has enough power to directly challenge the Warsmith, he personally doesn't have any desire for further power within the Warband. He recognizes his leader's physical and strategic might and is satisfied with Vhorrax's leadership, so long as the blood continues to flow. A former Legio Destroyer Sergeant, Khol-Su's understanding and appreciation for deploying massive, earth-scorching weaponry is almost unheard of within the World Eaters, yet makes him the perfect ally for the Iron Warrior Warsmith. Skhraal Skullface. The master of execution of the Warband and personal champion of the Warsmith. Skraal's allegiance and dedication to Vhorrax is second to none, despite being from two totally different legions. Skhraal doesn't think twice before executing a rebellious World Eater, if that is what the Warsmith commands. Skullface, so called due to his skull-shaped helmet, is bonded to a Khornate demon or entity that possesses his armor, which enhances his skills and his lust for blood, much to the chagrin of the majority of the chapter that otherwise shun the use of demon possession. It seems as though Skraal's mostly sound mental state, unmatched combat prowess, and lack of any true mutations has kept him from becoming a pariah. Armaguera. The Iron Warrior Terminator Champion is a hard-hitting component of the Warband. His unwavering devotion to Khorne and brutal combat style are reflected in the Terminator squads he commands. Less than 24 battle-hardened veterans from both Iron Warriors and World Eaters, united in their dedication to the Blood God. While not a truly independent entity, Armaguera's Terminators act as a separate group whose loyalty is to him more than the Warsmith. Armaguera is known for having challenged Vhorrax's authority on more than one occasion, seeing himself as Khorne's favourite for leading the Iron Butchers. His challenges thus far have gone without success. Dakarian Vron. As an adherent to the original Iron Warriors' creed, Vron stands out amongst the Chaos-touched leaders. His detachment of Iron Warriors specialise in the heavy weapon and tank squads required to support the more melee-focused parts of the Iron Butchers. His reluctance to fully embrace Chaos often leads to ideological clashes with other members of the Warband. However, his still sharp mind, untouched by the fury of Khorne, is often sought by Vhorrax himself, for when more cold-minded approaches and plans have to be organised. Varscorian. Driven by his demon sword, Varscorian is the Iron Warrior who leads the diverse Bastard Squads, composed of both World Eaters and Iron Warriors. Varscorian's leadership is to Khorne, but his centuries of service under the Iron Fourth keeps him from becoming a crazed madman, making him the ideal element to lead both World Eaters and Iron Warriors. This mix, while effective in combat, often results in power struggles and conflicts between the two distinct groups, leading to a volatile command structure. Bloodrust. A Berserker champion, Bloodrust embodies Khorne's love for melee combat. His past is at this point completely unknown. Bloodlust's mind is so lost in the red mist of Khorne's fury that his own memories are nothing but a jigsaw puzzle of delirious nightmares. Other key members include Razak, the World Eater's Void War and boarding specialist, Drusad, an Iron Warrior apothecary and Soul apothecary to the Warband, and Virago, a World Eater's warsmith specialised in demon bonding rituals and demonic weapon forging. Like many Chaos Warbands, the Iron Butchers have access to dozens of relics. However, here are the three most pivotal. The Megatherion. In the bowels of the hellish forge vessel, Hephaestus, the Iron Butcher's warsmith Vhorrax contemplated the culmination of months of work and sacrifice, literal sacrifice, from the main demon forge, a mountain walked out. Named the Megatherion, the great beast of Khorne was a massive demon engine whose physical body had been masterfully crafted by the allied Dark Mechanicum heretics, and then possessed by an entire horde of demons, transferred by the World Eater warsmith Virago into the mechanical abomination. Possessed by the fury of an entire pack of demons, with each of its weapons being a demon engine in its own right. Dangerous and uncontrollable, the Megatherion was very rarely deployed and was always under close control of Virago. Any foe that saw the deployment of the Megatherion was one that truly tested the resolve and patience of the Iron Butchers. Dropped in times of pure necessity, the great Khornate demon engine never lost a single conflict against the forces of the Imperium. It was, however, sadly destroyed by one of the spawn of Khorne's eternal rival, Tzeentch, a great lord of change, and an entire mustered army of Tzeentchian chaos spawn was able to bring down this savage demon engine once and for all. The Iron Maw. Originally called the Bloodied Maw, the vessel was the World Eater's strike cruiser commanded by the World Eater Chaos Lord Azhoth. Born in the forges of Sarum, the cruiser was a heavy support vessel, fast and swift, crafted with the lost skills of the 30th millennium. The Bloodied Maw served the World Eater captain Azhoth for about 8 millennia after the heresy, until he was killed by a demon prince dubbed the Clawed Worm, orchestrated by Vhorrax, who claimed the ship for himself as the flagship of the Iron Butchers. During the centuries, the ancient cruiser has been slowly reworked to increase both her firepower and defenses, thus reducing her previous speed and maneuverability. Though the ultimate addition to the Iron Maw was a powerful Nova cannon named the Wrath of the War God, that has been recently repaired and enhanced with dark technology to create a weapon capable of shooting psychic-infused projectiles. About 5 kilometers long and armed with weapons their like are not in the galaxy today, she stalks the void like a beast returned from the dark and forgotten past. Over time, warp travel has become an issue for the Warband, as navigators are hard to find and are increasingly prone to die or fall into complete madness. To get around this, the Iron Butchers have created a Demon Compass, a navigation tool fueled by a trapped Slaaneshi demon that is forced to stare into the warp, and connected to a cogitator built with lost obscure technologies, translates the tides of the Immaterium into lingua technis, allowing the Warband's warsmith to superimpose a coherent warp map on the real space map. The ship's captain can then guide the ship through the tides of the warp and reappear in the desired real space location with astonishing precision. Though it's not without its drawbacks, there is an entire Slaaneshi demon strapped into the navigation system after all. The Black Shards. The Black Shards were an extremely powerful relic possessed and venerated on the demon world of Grishava, populated by a primitive yet fearsome chaos cult of mutants and beastmen. It's not known how such a powerful relic ended up there in the first place. The Black Shards are believed to be fragments of a hellish blade imbued with the burning powers of chaos. Said to be the remains of a giant demon sword, their true nature isn't exactly known. Some believe they were once a part of a two-handed sword of the bloodthirster Takar, containing the essences of an entire legion of demons, while others even whisper that the fragments are the remains of an obsidian blade, wielded by a demon prince of chaos that will be born no sooner than M43, but whose blade has travelled backwards in time, following the warp's capricious tides. Whatever the truth is, and despite being only fragments of a more powerful artifact, the Black Shards still contain incredible powers. The Iron Butchers undertook a campaign to retrieve the powerful shards, clashing with the bestial and demonic population of Grashava and finally plundering the relics. Instead of keeping them for useless worship like those on Grashava, the shards were used to craft powerful weapons for the Iron Butchers. 2 smaller shards were granted to the Warsmith's personal companion, Skhraal Skullface, and forged his new weapons, Bone Carver and Flesh Mangler. Another larger shard was taken by Vhorrax himself to personally reforge his Thunder Hammer, originally known as the Gatecrasher, into the dreadful Chain Hammer, Corpse Grinder. And finally, the biggest shard was a fragment taller than an Astartes and way too powerful to be controlled by a single being. The Warband had to wait for almost 1,000 years before they could properly exploit it. Once finding the proper conglomeration of heretics in servitude or services owed, the shard was fused in the core of the Iron Maaw's Nova Cannon, imbuing its payload with demonic power. The battle for Mabalosse. After months of starship battles, the combined forces of the 64th Grand Company and the 24th Assault Cadre succeeded in landing on the planet's surface, and started the assault on the homeworld of the chaotic servants of the Clawed Worm. The first onslaught saw both the Iron Warriors and the World Eaters taking down various small outposts, and fighting to come closer to the main fortress of the world, whose walls were torn down by the Iron Warriors barraging. The World Eater commander at the time, Azhoth, had his berserkers unleash a final assault, entering the city and butchering every space marine, demon, man, and woman they could find. Azhoth met his fate at the hands of the demon prince known as the Clawed Worm, and Warsmith Vhorrax finally won control of the Warband, baptizing it the Iron Butchers. The Scourge of Kadimio II, a huge battle against a large crusade force of Black Templars that reshaped the Warband forever. Their army, once counting more than 1,000 Chaos Space Marines, was reduced to barely half that number, with their fleet being all but destroyed. The once powerful Warband was forced to abandon their base on Mabalosse, leaving behind all the resources and infrastructure they had built over the centuries. Internal divisions worsened the situation, with small groups of Chaos Space Marines scattered across the galaxy seeking refuge, trying to rebuild their forces. The remaining members of the Iron Butchers, still under Vhorrax's control, fled the Eye of Terror aboard the Iron Maw. Their whereabouts would be a mystery for the following millennia until they reappeared in the Coronis Expanse as roaming corsairs and mercenaries. The hunt for the Acolytes of the Blind Prophet. The Acolytes of the Blind Prophet was a chaos cult, extremely active in the Coronis Expanse and in the nearby Calixis sector, led by a small but extremely dangerous force of word bearers. What made the cult so threatening was the extremely scattered area in which they were operated, and the slow growth of the cults within the Imperial worlds. The Acolytes of the Blind Prophet sowed their cult leaders like seeds throughout the Coronis Expanse. When the cult exploded and made itself recognizable, the original cell was too old to be retraced, and so the Imperium struggled to find connections and clues towards the point of origin of the cult. While the Imperium hunted the cult for about 2 standard centuries, they were unable to track down the Acolytes of the Blind Prophet's ultimate headquarters, and so they were never really able to put an end to this threat. But in the meantime, the Iron Butchers had begun to operate in the Expanse, interested in both eliminating a powerful competitor and in the rumoured chaotic treasure the Acolytes of the Blind Prophet were allegedly protecting inside their fortress. Thanks to the knowledge and information available only attained through the whispers of the Warp, the Iron Butchers were able to triumph where the Imperial Inquisition had failed. After following the cult's tracks for years, they finally discovered their stronghold, called the Skhraal, within the Void Dancer's role. While the Acolytes of the Blind Prophet were fewer in number than the heretic Astartes they had available, the Wordbearer's stronghold was guarded by thousands of Chaos Spawn, minor demonic entities, and lesser possessed, causing the Iron Butchers heavy casualties before finally reaching the innermost part of the Skhraal. Here, the Iron Butchers' exalted Terminator champion, Armaguera, slew the Warband Master Sorcerer, while the Chaos Lord of the Acolytes of the Blind Prophet clashed directly against Warsmith Vhorrax himself. After a hard-fought battle, the Word-Bearer Lord was finally shredded by Vhorrax's chain hammer, putting an end to the warband. The Iron Butchers grew in strength after this episode, both thanks to their fame that led many heretics and renegades to join their forces, and to the invaluable Chaos relics that they had looted from the acolytes of the Blind Prophet's fortress. Ironically, the Iron Butchers' intervention proved to be of great help to the Imperium, eliminating an increasingly powerful cult that was threatening an entire star system. Nay, entire star systems. The Iron Butchers have become a living paradox in their relentless pursuit of power and resources. Although they lack the numbers to re-establish dominion over a single world, their thirst for violence has transformed them into a formidable war machine that constantly hungers for sustenance. These bloodthirsty marauders are meticulous in their approach, ensuring they don't squander ammunition or resources. Yet their vast array of weaponry, their savage demon engines, and their hyper-aggressive way of war demand a continuous supply of raw materials, technology, and mortals to maintain peak operations. To satisfy their voracious appetite, the Iron Butchers must constantly hunt for larger prey. Simple vessels offer little nourishment. They require entire moons or planets to satiate their hunger. Yet this presents another conundrum. The warband lacks time, numbers, and logistics to fully exploit these worlds. Thus, the Iron Butchers embrace their scavenging nature, plundering and exploiting the resources of their conquest before leaving them half devoured. Depending on the value of the spoils, and the likelihood of encountering a stronger foe, they may linger for years or simply depart within days. However, a darker fate may befall those who fall prey to the Iron Butchers. Planets or moons not fully stripped of resources can be sold to a variety of buyers, such as renegade factions, Xenos, unscrupulous Styx merchants of the Coronis Expanse, or even other Chaos warbands. The Iron Butchers relinquish control of these worlds, accepting a payment that pales in comparison to the true worth of the planet, but serves their immediate needs. And now, let us move on to the review of Enter the Butcher, aka KPU's Iron Butchers Homebrew Warband. And to help with this, I have summoned a rather dubious traitor space marine.
How did I get here? What did you do? The slaves, they're going to get out. No. What is this?
And so, for the audience's benefit, I would just like to let you all know, if you're not familiar with our podcast, this is Red.
Yes.
Red is our resident Night Lord / murderer, and hopefully Red can give me a hand doing the review of KPU's Iron Butchers today.
Did you use the warp to get me here?
Don't ask questions.
What?
It's okay.
Okay. What are we doing? Enter the Butcher, KPU? Okay. Yeah, I hope you know, if the slaves start fucking with the machinery, it's on your hands.
It'll be okay. We'll get you back in time.
They're like
it's no problem. So we wanted to start off by talking about some of the things we really liked about KPU's Homebrew, the Iron Butchers, after the long review we've just done. Sorry, the long video we've just done. And I think one of the things I just wanted to start off by saying was how much I really, and I know it's a really obvious thing to throw out first, but I really loved the artwork. The majority of the, not all, but the majority of the artwork you've seen watching the video you've just watched, KPU has had commissioned for the Iron Butchers himself and paid for, so lots of incredible artwork by Brushray, and any number of other
got
artists.
Some done by Iris and George Abelayan, a couple of those. He's gotten just, if not more than I have myself. We showed off a lot of his other artworks in the artist podcast episode we did as well.
Yeah, well, that was a great episode to just show off a ton of, big artists in the community, and it's really nice to see that, such a prolific and incredible homebrewer has made use of so many of them.
Really shows the versatility of it.
So moving on to something actually about the homebrew itself that I really, really liked. When I first heard about the Iron Butchers, I was a little bit hesitant to immediately be very sort of fond of them, because they're a kind of a chimeric warband, but they're not really a chimeric warband, because the problem with the chimeric warbands is it's for a lot of treacherous waters when making a homebrew space marine faction that's using dual gene seed. But ultimately the Iron Butchers aren't using mixed gene seed or anything like that. It's literally just two factions. You've got Iron Warriors and you've got the World Eaters, and they've just kind of coalesced together, and the crossover, how they've sort of impacted each other in different ways, and Some Iron Warriors are being more like World Eaters, and the World Eaters are slowly taking on certain doctrines of the Iron Warriors, whilst both sides still have their members who are still very resolute in the origins of who they are, and we see that in some of KPU's characters really, really well. For example, we mentioned him in the video just now, that he's got a character called Vhron, he's an Iron Warrior. He pretty much rejects chaos, but he is still an Iron Warrior at heart. He still has a lot of time for and respect for his men and his purpose as an Iron Warrior, and ultimately still rejects chaos worship. And that nature of having that character who is so calculated and cold gives a really useful narrative tool to Vhorrax, the leader of the Warband. To have someone he can go to and say, "Hey man, the World Eaters are kind of being a bit too fucking mental. I need something else. I need someone who's a bit more chill." And I love that cast of characters he's got. None of them feel particularly cookie cutter, except for I think one of them. His name was like Rust Gore or something. He's just a berserker.
Yeah, Blood Rust, right? Or something. Yeah, just a maddened berserker. He's shown literally right after the most level-headed dude in the Warband. I like that. In terms of like showing off characters, I like how here's the most level-headed man in the Warband, and here's someone who's batshit insane.
It's brilliant.
But one thing about Vhron that this probably goes more into deeper characterization, maybe even some lore writing of itself. I want to know if Vhron, being as level-headed and pretty much just the bog standard Iron Warrior in the Warband, leads to a lot of internal strife because of that. Because previously stated, Vhorrax, the Warsmith, does worship Khorne.
Yeah.
And then he has this one dude who rejects all chaos, but he is still kept around for his usefulness, and that makes sense. But I mean, I feel like there would be a bit more of an internal struggle with him being there, right, and rejecting everyone else's beliefs, because Marines aren't the most open-minded when living with people about religious freedom.
No, exactly. But that kind of touches on something that KPU had made a really good point of mentioning throughout with the Iron Butchers, and that is that they do sometimes struggle with internal conflict amongst their Marines. Moments where the World Eaters and the Iron Warriors side of things will have like facets of them who will just have had enough. And it takes these bigger-than-life characters like Vhorrax, like Skhraal, and like Kolsu to actually step in and say, you guys need to shut the fuck up. And whilst he hasn't put any like written instances of Vhron's character actually causing any of that stuff, I think it might be a safe assumption to say, well, there could be some of that from there, because Vhron's not going to be the only Iron Warrior in there who's a purist, right? Mm-hmm. There's going to be a couple more. And with all things, it's always the purists on either side who cause the problems.
Yeah, it is like seeing how everyone degrades over time because of chaos.
I think another thing about the Warband that I really wanted to talk about that I really, really liked, this was actually how KPU had written it. It's kind of 2 points in one. When KPU had written the combat doctrine for the Iron Butchers, I was reading through it and I was thinking, well, this is cool. This is exactly what you'd expect of Iron Warriors who work with World Eaters, right? And it's not bad, if being like hyper original, having their combat doctrine be, oh, well, our combat doctrine involves flying a Thunderhawk up someone's ass. You don't have to be mental with that. It can be pretty much what you'd expect. But what's really good about it is he took the time to actually write about the flaws with their combat doctrine and how they know about their flaws and what they try to do to sort of work around that. Mm-hmm. It's a really lovely extra little touch of him as an author and a writer basically saying, I'm aware that this thing is very cookie cutter in some way, but also there are downsides to it that I am going to take the time to acknowledge. And most homebrewers don't do that. Most homebrewers don't write their combat doctrines or their characters and spend any time talking about their flaws, right? Their actual flaws.
I think that leads into a large portion why we like this homebrew so much, is that they are inherently flawed, and the flaws are out there front and center along with their strengths. So they don't come off as, discount Black Legion or, the badass super threat that goes around destroying everything because they're so powerful. They come off as like a genuine warband with their own struggles and flaws they're trying to work around, and with the characterization of both their combined forces, it makes a lot of sense how, you know, this internal strife between more like hot-headed and berserk world eaters to the cold, calculating iron warriors, and how they're trying to retrofit each other's tactics and ways of war to each other to try and become a successful warband so they don't all get killed.
Yeah, well, it's a tale of survival. The two of them do very well. I mean, their sort of maiden voyage right after the big battle where they had to leave the Eye of Terror is that in a vacuum where they have to escape to survive. And everything they've done ever since has been to survive. You know, it's a really wonderful little thing. And again, it's like you said, it's not overplayed. They're not overcooked into being the all-powerful big bad. They have to pick and choose their fights. They have to pick and choose their masters. You know, and despite there's a few things in there. I think one maybe minor complaint I'd have on the overcooked sort of scale. And again, he hasn't overcooked much. It's really good. You know, a lot of homebrewers will overcook the fuck out of certain things and have elements or relics of their homebrew be very sort of Deus Ex Machina devices, right? One of the things I'm not a huge fan of is how he had a Warband relic, which is just this giant crystalline thing. Oh, it's a giant shattered sword. Sorry, I used the term shards quite a lot. And how this one like shard of this presumably giant demon sword that they found is basically now imbued into the weapons of like the two main guys in the warband, as well as the battle barge, or sorry, strike cruiser, or whatever it is they fly around on. I do feel like that's a little bit Deus Ex Machina. I feel like, you know, that there could have been an excuse there to write separate stories about how these characters got a hold of these relic weapons and how these relic weapons came to be, rather than it just be this one giant sweeping thing that created a series of relic weapons within the homebrew, you know?
I mean, I suppose. I don't take too much issue with that, because the idea of breaking down a much larger sword and forging into smaller swords isn't even that uncommon of a thing in fantasy stuff.
Yeah.
I don't mind it. I mean, I guess it shows... I mean, it's just, in all honesty, it's just flavor text that I don't think really adds or takes away anything. I think it more or less is supposed to accentuate the importance of the characters who have those swords now.
Yeah, I suppose that's another really good way of looking at it. But something that's not just flavor text that I really like as well is how these characters and their squads, the squads within the Iron Butchers, namely I think they're called the Black Bane's Destroyers. How he actually wrote in his document how they are very specifically inspired by the Destroyer squads from the Horus Heresy, and how they operate like the Destroyer squads from the Horus Heresy, which is a wonderful, wonderful callback. Because, you know, when you look at how the World Eaters operated during the Horus Heresy, you know, obviously we can look to the Siege of Terror to say how mad they were, but taking that sort of viciousness of what is, you know, essentially the World Eaters and giving it a sense of direction is something that you can only do in M41 if those World Eaters are being bolstered by a more tactical force like the Iron Warriors. I think it's a really, really great way to bring back the motifs of the Horus Heresy that the World Eaters had without stretching what's believable, you know?
Yeah, it goes into that thing about them retrofitting each other's tactics to one another to complement them.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's a really wonderful thing he's done.
One thing I wanted to bring up that I think could use more work is their idea of they never use demonic allies.
Yeah.
It's not something that breaks the whole homebrew for me. I think it's just something that I think needs more work or thought put into it, because it previously stated in the lore document, Warsmith Vhorrax worships corn. But before that, it also says the warband doesn't use any demonic allies. They don't like demons. But they use a lot of demon engines and a lot of demon weapons, which isn't uncommon for Iron Warriors, or even Chaos Warbands in general, to just use demon engines and demonic shit, but just not the demonic allies. But at the same time, people who just use the demon engines and demonic weapons don't worship Chaos. Warsmith Vhorrax worships Chaos, which it doesn't make much sense why he would worship Chaos, but at the same time not want the demonic allies that come along with worshipping Khorne. maybe if there was more explanation on he does it so the rest of the warband doesn't get out of control, because maybe he thinks that if he uses more demons more liberally, his Iron Warriors are going to rebel against him. It's just something that's doesn't make sense to me, or it's just not very well explained, that I think could use more work.
Yeah, I mean, I think my qualm with it is similar. I don't mind the notion that they, in and of itself, I don't mind the notion that they don't use demons, right? Even though they use demon engines. In and of itself, I don't dislike that notion. I think there's been a few instances, though, where it has been skirted around a little bit to get mostly the same effect, and I think the biggest perpetrator of that is probably my second favorite character in his homebrew, and that's Skhraal. Skhraal Skullface. Skhraal Skullface, right? He's not possessed. He's not. But his armor is. And that, to me, just feels like possession with extra steps.
It's one of those things of like, oh, he's still in control of himself. It's his armor that gives him all the fancy abilities.
Yeah, I mean, to me personally, I feel like just cutting out the middleman and saying, no, we do have possession. Just, I mean, one of the things he didn't put a lot of in his document, which I really wish he put it more in, was about a character called Vhorrax, I think, who is a World Eater's warp smith. This guy is essentially the head honcho in charge of binding demons to things, right? Mm-hmm. And I suspect in the future in KPU's writings, this guy's going to become more and more important. Because you've got the foundations for a really exceptional warpsmith, a really exceptional character who fucks with demons, right? I see no reason why they couldn't take more of that, the strictness of the Iron Warriors, and bring that to their incorporation of demons, you know? Mm-hmm. If it's possible for the word bearers to have hordes of possessed who are able to think and feel and not necessarily be killing machines all the time, I'm certain a very well talented warpsmith like this Vhorrax character alongside the Iron Warriors, that sort of those discipline motifs that he puts forward would work really well, you know, and we wouldn't have to skirt around, oh, no demons, no possession. You could just embrace, oh no, there is, but we do it our way.
Yeah, like possession doesn't mean that they're literally just a demon inside a Marine. The Marine's still there. He's just a bit fucked up. Yeah. And I personally like it when Warband includes some type of possessed character. I don't think a lot of homebrews do that, where like it's usually like either like the Chaos Lord, who's like just basically a demon prince, but there's not really a lot of, you know, tiny possessed characters that you see running around. I think that's a good concept that you could work around. Yeah. Like, you know, he's a Marine that's still struggling with himself, trying to keep himself in check despite being demonically possessed. And it might be because possession in 40k is way different than it was in 30k, where it was more of a symbiotic relationship in 30k, and it's more like, no, you're basically just a demon now in 40k. It might lend to the fact that maybe people think that might take away from a character in some way, which I don't think at all. I think it could quite possibly add to their character more. Like, this dude is part of the head honchos of the warband despite him being possessed.
Yeah. Well, if you look at characters from the Horus Heresy like Tal, and I know he's a standout, right? I know he's a standout. But it's quite surprising to me because not many homebrewers use the Tal archetype for their characters, you know. And I think, yeah, that could be because of those differences between possession in 30k and 40k, where in 40k it's like, yeah, you're a fucking demon now, deal with it, you know. But I feel like if that archetype could thrive anywhere, it would be in a place where you've got a really fucking talented warpsmith and a warband culture that centers around discipline mixed with extreme hyper-violence, you know, because that's what that Argatal character archetype is.
Yeah, it definitely has a place in KPU's Warband, I think, if you wanted to add on to it. 8-bound exists even, you know?
Of course.
Yeah, I think that would be perfect for something like this Warpsmith character to be specialized, making 8-bound, you know? By the way, I want to say, before we move on, I really like the idea that the Warpsmith of the Warband is a World Eater, not an Iron Warrior.
Yes.
I think a lot of people think Warpsmiths are exclusively Iron Warriors. I love seeing it when other legions have a Warpsmith. Because you could have, there's so much more you can do with it. You can give them their own special little blend of how fucked up of a tech marine they are. Because, you know, you always see the Warpsmith model, it's an Iron Warrior, and they're always like, oh, they're wearing heavier armor, and they just have mechadendrites. But it's never like, here's a World Eater Warpsmith, he has a fucking Omniscion chain axe instead.
Yeah, no, it's sweet. It's really sweet. It's a great character, and I hope that over the next few months and years, as KPU adds to this, we get to see more of that character. I remember again, I think his name's Virago or something. I think more of that character would be awesome, because... And this isn't a critique, because, you know, so we're talking about the good and the bad, and this isn't a bad thing. This is me asking for more, as a cliffhanger, sort of asking for more. I'd love more of that character. But one of the things that I really love, two things at once, actually. Two things I really love about KPU's homebrew that I think a lot of other homebrewers could use as a point of reference, potentially, is how he has done the Iron Maw and how he has done the Megatherion. Now, the Iron Maw is their ship, and the Megatherion was, bastard's dead now, but the Megatherion was this giant demon engine about the size, just a tiny bit larger than your average Imperial Knight. Typically, when homebrewers try to do something like this, it's the same as the demon thing. It gets overcooked very quickly, and it suddenly becomes just a Deus Ex Machina device. And KPU was like, oh no, I'm going to make him badass with the Megatherion. I'm going to make it very badass, but I'm not going to be above having it lose or be killed, which is why it doesn't exist anymore, because it was killed.
Yeah.
You know, and the Iron Maw, he talks in his document about how it's this great big thing, it's this great big badass thing, but by the way, it's actually really fucking slow compared to other strike cruisers. It's nowhere near as maneuverable as other strike cruisers. And this is the thing as well, it's a strike cruiser. It's like it's smaller than a battle barge, right? Mm-hmm. You know, so it's this wonderful Diddy craft, housing as much as it can with whatever supporting vessels it's got, and it's not overcooked, and I think that's really, really wonderful.
One thing he does include in his lore document is other ships that they had that are just destroyed.
Yeah.
Like he talks about things that the warband just doesn't have anymore. Like, these guys used to have a lot more, but now they're kind of in like a low point. I like that. I like it when, you know, it really helps play into this warband has gotten fucked up over the years when they've been active.
Yeah, no, it's really good. And I think on that note, another thing worth mentioning is KPU's done a really good job of laying out his document. Mm-hmm. In the description down below, there'll obviously be a link to the Discord, and in the Discord, you'll be able to find KPU's document pretty quickly. The way he's laid it out is brilliant. It's really, really good. It's really concise. You get to find the meat of what you want to find very quickly. His artwork doesn't get in the way of anything. You know, it's not filled with walls of text that doesn't add to anything. It's a really great, simple document. And it's the thing as well, we've got a few documents that have been submitted to the Homebrew Review that are so fucking fancy, and they're amazing. They're so much fun to read. KPU's isn't fancy, but it's amazing nonetheless. You know, you don't need to have a bloody PhD in Photoshop.
A PhD in Photoshop.
To make an exceptionally laid out homebrew document, you know?
Yeah, if anyone takes anything away from this in terms of wanting advice for their own type of stuff, if they want to submit it, I say look at how KPU formatted his stuff. It's not over the top. It's honestly, the layout is really good, and there's no real flourish to the document. Not that I'm trying to dog on KPU. He did a wonderful job writing his characters, and I honestly prefer this format because when I occasionally look at the homebrew documents, and a lot of it is just either disorganized or like way too opulent, to where it's like it becomes kind of like a mental drag a little bit reading through all of it with all this like shifting text and stuff. I really like the simplicity of how KPU presented his stuff, and just going forward, if anyone cares to have a good representation of how would most likely get us to read it, it's basically follow KPU's format. He talks about, you know, the warband's history, he talks about their characters, and he goes into stuff like combat doctrine and relics and stuff like that. It's super simple. And it's very, very, accessible. It's very accessible to those who want to read it.
Well, it's a great focus on the core elements without spending I mean, he still puts effort into the tertiary stuff, but he really puts his effort into the core elements that you need, and then gives you tidbits and Easter eggs in the tertiary information. And it's a real great way to stay invested and stay gripped into reading through a homebrew document, you know?
One of the things I really like how KPU's evolved when writing this is that before he used to have like 4 or 5 just texts of wall for one character. But as he's gone on writing it, he's shortened it down to a very short, easy to read synopsis of just the basics of the character that gives you enough to know about them to get you interested. Where like then you can maybe go to like the longer documents and read more about them. I like that. I like it when people give you short, sweet, simplistic paragraphs on the character itself and not a big, long history. A lot of people do that, I've noticed, is that they feel like the characters are the warband instead of the warband being having the characters in it. It's not the same.
You're absolutely right. I mean, that's the thing, though. You can do these huge walls of text, right? No one's stopping you. And if you have a good time doing that, you should do it. But remember, as readers and as people who are going to end up reading your homebrew, not just us, but others you send it to, people who come across it, for someone to read huge walls of text for your homebrew, you have to first earn their intrigue. And so if you're opening like 5, 10, 20 pages is just massive walls of text, it doesn't matter how good it gets later on, that investment's just not going to be there. And KPU has absolutely nailed getting that quick investment straight away. You know, right, let's look at drawing this to a close. Red, quickly name one thing you really, really love about the Iron Butchers.
I just love how rich their history actually is between, and how basically it's 2 different types of warbands welded together out of the mere fact of survival. Just there's the whole concept of them and how KPU's presented it and how he's given each of the characters their own dynamic within the warband. I think he's done a great job of characterizing the warband and characterizing the characters inside of it that help make it, you know?
Yeah. Gosh, I think for me, and I'm a sucker for this, very simple, I love their combat doctrine. And I think I just love it so much because, it's such a simple combat doctrine, but as well, how KPU went out of his way and put the effort in to go, well, it's a flawed combat doctrine as well. It has pitfalls. It's the best they can do with what they got, but they know that it's not the best thing in the world. He takes into account that Khorne berserkers can be unreliable. He takes into account that they don't have lots of numbers. He takes into account that it's easy for them to get overwhelmed, and so they have to, deal with all of that in the way they do war. I just think the way KPU is presented, how the Iron Butchers do battle, is bloody brilliant, honestly.
I think, actually, to change my answer a little bit, I think my favorite thing in the warband is Kulsu, the raptor guy. I love all the art. How his hand is just a big claw, and he leads the destroyer squads. I like that. I like his design. I like his little gimmick with the big claw and the Bolkite Serpentina. He's probably one of my favorite guys. And also the Warpsmith. I really want to see artwork done of that guy. I can't wait to see that guy get more fleshed out later on.
I think since you got to change your answer, I'll change mine as well. I fucking love that Vron character. It's just this one guy who kind of rejects chaos somewhat, and he's just surrounded by these motherfuckers who worship Khorne, and he knows he's like the most reliable guy in the room 95% of the time.
It's like that one meme of the guy standing in the corner, and he's just going, "They don't know that I reject chaos."
You don't know that I reject chaos. I gotta do that. I gotta make a meme of that. Fucking hell. Oh, goodness. Anyways, that's all we've got today for this installment in the Homebrew Review series. If you would like your Homebrew to be reviewed in the same way we've done this one, come to our Discord, submit it through the Homebrew Review submissions. Just have a look at the rules that are pinned up there real quick. Submit your Homebrew. I will read through it. The other guys will read through it. And we'll sit and discuss what we can do, you know? If you like our content, you like the podcast, you like the lore videos, you like the homebrew videos, you like the homebrew review, you like the shorts, whatever, we would love it if you consider hitting that subscribe button and maybe just took a minute to just have a look at our Patreon.
Just a quick look.
Really appreciate it. Anyways, thank you everyone so much for watching, and we will see you next time.
I'm going to kill Tom now. Good night.
And a huge, huge, huge thank you to our patrons. Oxy, MJC, Matt, Linky, Voldesterian, Ollie Wally, Purple, Rion, Rough Time, Desiree, Niklas, The Branded Slayer, Barban, Black Hall, Bobby Coolpop, The Croc Enthusiast, Dark Cannibal, Frank, Jury-Rigged Hobbies, The Gaming Storyteller, Jack, Jordan, Juan Romero, Rafe Thompson, Sanguinius's Left Nut, Alex Marquez, Byron Holmes, John, Josh, Mr. Hanson, Revy, Sir Walton, Steph, Thane Horrigan, Toz D, Voxcast to Nowhere, Waffle Marine, and Doms.